So it's at the edge of what it can do. And so let us then live on the edge for a bit.
Okay.
This is Talks with Sri Ramana Maharshi Satsang, a time to listen, reflect, and deeply meditate. Know yourself and be always free and at peace. Welcome. I'm Richard Clarke, hosting this satsang. I'm reviewing and commenting on talks recorded in the book Talks with Sri Ramana Maharshi. And today I'll be dealing with some of the content of talk number 13. First, the devotee asks, what are the obstacles which hinder realization of the self? Maharshi says they are habits of mind, vasanas. The disciple asks how to overcome the mental habits. And Maharshi says, by realizing the self. The disciple says, that is a vicious circle. Maharshi says, it is the ego which raises such difficulties, creating obstacles, and then suffers from the perplexity of apparent paradoxes. Find out who makes the inquiries, and the self will be found. Then the disciple asks, what are the aids for realization? Maharshi, the teachings of the scriptures and of realized souls. Disciple, can such teachings be discussions, lectures, and meditations? Maharshi says, yes, all of these are only secondary aids, whereas the essential is the master's grace. Then the disciple asks, how long will it take for one to get that? Maharshi asks, why do you desire to know? The disciple says, to give me hope. The Maharshi replies, even such a desire is an obstacle. The self is ever there. There is nothing without it. Be the self, and the desires and doubts will disappear. Such self is the witness in sleep, dream, and waking states of existence. These states belong to the ego. The self transcends even the ego. Did you not exist in sleep? Did you know that when you were asleep or unaware of the world? It is only in the waking state that you describe the experience of sleep as being unawareness. Therefore, the consciousness when asleep is the same as that when awake. If you know what this waking consciousness is, you will know the consciousness which witnesses all three states. Such consciousness can be found by seeking the consciousness as it was in sleep. Now, there are several things to unravel here. First, was the question, what are the obstacles which hinder realization of the self? What a good question. This is something that concerns all of us who would take the time to hear Ramana Maharshi's words. Spiritual growth and realization are important to us, but what gets in the way? What gets in the way in your life? It's all mental. Ramana says it starts with habits. Habits are really just repeated thought. The way the brain works is the more that you do or think something, the easier it becomes, the more it becomes the mental wiring that supports the habit. These mental habits go deep, even to the habitual way that you see yourself and the world with everything and everybody in it. These habits become the way that you perceive what you think is reality. Most people never question any of this. To cut through all of this, then Ramana tells us to look for the source for these ideas, these habits, is this seeming individual that you think is you. But who are you, really? Are you the one that has and does these habits? Or are you the one who knows all of this? And this knower, just who is this? Is it my body, my mind, my ego, or is it the knower of all of these? Ramana says to find out who is asking the question, and the self will be found. Next is asked, what are the aids for realization? Another good question. Growth and realization are important to us. What can help? My own experience says there are some things that can help. First is keeping up with the practice of looking within. For me and most people, it's a gradual process. To keep it up, there needs to be something about it that satisfies you, that nourishes you, something that when you recall, you feel good about. So notice this for yourself, and it'll help you keep going. And though the process is looking within, there, and this is something you have to do for yourself, it's good, maybe it's vital that you have some source of teaching and knowledge outside of yourself. This is because the process is inherently one of reaching beyond your limited thinking and ego. This is a big job, and if there is no one you can listen to, you're going to be limited by your ego in your quest to go beyond the ego, and that just doesn't work. Ramana says that the first aid is the teaching of the scriptures and the realized souls. These are external to you. The final step is internal. Ramana calls it the Master's grace. I think he uses this language to explain the unexplainable. This final step just comes when it comes. You can't force it. You can't make it happen. The more you try to make it happen, the more it recedes. Since it is not about your ego, then ego power doesn't work. Ramana says it's grace. Then is asked, how long will it take for one to get that? Ramana says, even such a desire is an obstacle. The self is ever there. The desire takes us out of ourselves, looking for how to fill the desire. He says, be the self, and the desires and doubts will disappear. So it is not a matter of doing or thinking or experiencing or even knowing. Instead, it is just being. And it is being what you already are. This should be easy, right? Well, it would be, but we just have all these ideas and habits and mistaken identities that get in the way. Practice is discovering all of this and seeing that it is false, that it is not at all who you are. Now we will hear my teacher Nome with a discourse as the self.
Abidance in Brahman is abidance as Brahman. Knowledge of the self is being the self. What do you consider yourself to be? If you consider yourself to be a body or an embodied individual, you will then suppose that the attributes and activities of the body, its conditions and states, life and death, pertain to you. Are you the body? If you are not a body, what then are you? Bodiless, you are not a thing, nor are you located anywhere. Yet you exist. What is the nature of this existence? What do you consider yourself to be? If you consider yourself to be a mind, a second knowing entity, in addition to or separate from the infinite consciousness, which is Brahman, then you will assume thoughts pertain to you. Are you the mind? If you are not thought, if you are not anything you can conceive of, what are you? You who exist, what is the nature of your existence? If you suppose yourself to be an individual, an ego, has this actually ever been seen? Or is it merely assumed? And if assumed, assumed by whom? By the ego itself? How can something that is unreal assume itself? What do you consider yourself to be? There is existence. Unborn, imperishable, not an object, indivisible, conditionless, transcendent. But what do you consider yourself to be? What is the meaning of yourself? Dependent on your identity is what you regard as reality. So then, if you misidentify as a sensing entity or a body, an embodied individual, you will suppose that there's an external world that is real. If not, then not. If you suppose yourself to be a mind, then things that are subtle, things composed of thought, will be regarded as real. If not, then not. If you regarded the I, the individual, as your identity, you will correspondingly assume there is an objective sphere of experience, this that is experienced by the I. If you find your true existence is I-less, that is to say egoless, then there is no such thing as this. What then exists? What then are you? Just existence itself, inconceivable, imperceptible, immutable, and ineffable. This infinite eternal existence of the nature of being, consciousness, bliss is what in truth all are. And there is no all, no you, distinct therefrom. To realize the undifferentiated, egoless, true existence of the self is the purpose of inquiry and indeed all sadhana. Sri Bhagavan says, who is to realize what when all that there is the one self? Understand the profound significance of this by steady, deep inquiry. to know what in truth you are. It is not known through the senses. It is not known in thought. Non-objective knowledge is the substance of the inquiry. What do you consider yourself to be? And what in truth are you? If you wisely discern this, the self knows itself as it is. Brahman knows Brahman. And there is nothing other, no one other, to be ignorant of this. What in truth are you? And what do you consider yourself to be? Cease to confound that which is not the self with the self, and you find the perfect fullness, which is supreme peace. The not-self does not actually exist. The self alone is real. The self alone exists. Dive within, and you will understand.